Matters lying on the table. There are no matters lying on the table from last meetings. We can carry on without a resolution there. That moves us on to the public forum. And today we've got James Hart from Corporate Cabs, Green Cabs, or representing Corporate Cabs, Green Cabs, Queenstown Companies, and the Small Passenger Service Association. So, James, if you'd like to come up and make your presentation, and Grant Scannell's here as well with them from the association. So you've got 3 minutes. So,
yeah. So thank you for taking the time to hear our submission. We're here today to talk about the Queenstown SPV permit system. The Land Transport Amendment Act 2017 significantly deregulated the taxi industry. Many of the protections for drivers and passengers were responses to serious incidents in the industry. These included sexual assaults, physical assaults, and murders. The 2017 Land Transport Amendments saw a removal of oversight requirements, removal of training and testing on law and practice, removal of English proficiency, removal of area knowledge, removal of signage requirements, including display of the tariff schedule, removal of in-car cameras, removal of meters, and a reduction in the requirements for a passenger service license. It didn't take long for the negative consequences to appear, and Waka Kotahi's own figures show sexual assault allegations have grown by a whopping 800%. QLDC's SPV scheme was a leading example of how local bodies could help ensure safety and fairness, but the scheme requires fine-tuning. We have seen a relationship breakdown between reputable operators and QLDC. We are disappointed in the lack of communication, the lack of progress, the reneging of assurances, as well as the unfair imposition of full fees following an unreasonably short time frame. It had been agreed that the full permit fee would not be applied, and the fee would be reduced from $500 to $100 per vehicle per annum. We were told the works were expected to be completed by the next round, and the full fee would be reintroduced once the issues had been resolved. However, in 2023, we see a halving of available SPS fee ranks, ongoing works, and a situation with independent operators that continues to spiral out of control. Consumer protection issues are a regular occurrence, and the Camp Street ranks are antisocial hotspots. Independent operators continue to behave like rogues with their charging methods and have engaged in aggressive bullying tactics that have seen a reduction in the number of reputable operators on the ranks. Customers are being charged minimum fares of $30 to $50 to travel short distances, with many independent operators refusing to do short trips. The moving of ranks was agreed to in principle, but it appears no action has been taken to implement this. The Queenstown region has developed into an unlevel playing field where reputable operators pay a fee to occupy SPSV ranks, while non-permit holders simply occupy other preferential spaces in the surrounding area. QLDC's 2-day notice of permit expiries was also unreasonably narrow. The lack of willingness to deal in good faith and the reneging of previous assurances, the unreasonable timeframes imposed, and the overpriced cost of the permits has led to the reputable taxi companies to engage with local media and prepare a complaint to the Office of the Ombudsman. Queenstown taxis, corporate cabs, and green cabs have all elected not to participate in the SPSV rank scheme, as the permits have been watered down to a simple revenue gathering exercise. The lack of participation by the 3 reputable operators will undoubtedly result in permits being issued to rogue independent operators, thereby exacerbating the problem.
Thank you very much. Just got time for any questions? Sorry? No, it's just time for a quick question if anyone's got one.
Have we got a copy of?
We have.
Yeah.
No, so yeah, my understanding is that you're just looking for a review of the system or maintenance of the permit system or the permit fee at the lower rate for now.
That's one review. So until some of the issues can be resolved, we think that it's unfair. So if we take a look at Treasury's 2017 guidance on the setting of charges in the public sector, there are criteria that need to be met in terms of establishing a fair fee structure. And we don't believe that QLDC's return to the full $500 is fair, given the fact that we see a halving in the number of ranks. So we've got 9 rank spaces to service 150 current permit holders. In addition to that, we don't see the value of the SPV ranks. So if you think about it from a driver's perspective, they're parked on Camp Street if they're law-abiding. And they're at a disadvantage to the numerous independent operators that I just took these photos last night on Beach Street, which are parked directly outside eateries and bars. Passengers are coming out and getting into the cars with these drivers. So what's the value of the permits as far as we're concerned?
Okay, well, thanks very much. We have circulated that submission as well next to our committee members here, so on to other members of the council too. So thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, oh, sorry.
But have you got any scheduled any activity with the council staff on this, or is it,
Yes.
have you got anything at the line, or are you doing this
No.
alongside what you're doing with the staff? Or?
So we've been working on this for a couple of years now, along with Queenstown Police and Waka Kotahi were involved in it as well. And then things sort of like fell apart at the end of 2021. So we were told that with the works that were going on in Queenstown, it was going to take some time. So we were patient and we sat there. We were given a discount from $500 to $100. So we thought, well, okay, we were understanding. We said, okay, well, let's just sit here and wait. On the 28th of June, we were sent a letter advising us that the permits were about to expire and we were about to go back up to the full $500. So and that was on the 30th. So we were given 2 days notice. And that was despite reassurances from Mark Baker that we would have another meeting to discuss the permit fees prior to them increasing. So we don't feel that we've been dealt with in good faith there. Since then, we've tried to engage with Mark Baker, but he's been relatively non-responsive. He's then told us that this is the appropriate forum to be addressing all of the issues that we've got in this report, and we've got that in emails from him.
Okay.
So to address all of these issues within 3 minutes isn't really fair. The extension expires today as well. So we don't feel that there was enough time for the committee or for the appropriate people to consider extending this extension as this is looked into. In addition to that, Grant this morning received a phone call from Mark Baker advising that he wasn't going to be attending this meeting, and also that the decision has already been made around the fees. So I've flown down from Wellington for this. And so again, these are questions that I have around dealing in good faith, fairness and natural justice.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very quickly because we do have to wrap it up.
Thank you. Yeah, look, I just want to say I haven't actually had a chance to read through that, so I will. And I do think that's something that we need to understand better, because I haven't got my head around the issues, and I'm sorry for that because I know it's been in the media for a while. But that what you've written is really helpful. I think we can discuss this, and it would be worth having a workshop on it so that councillors can get their head around it, and then we can talk about next steps if any.
Yeah, we prefer to deal in good faith rather than going through the media and going through the office of the ombudsman. But if we can't get that from council, then that's the avenue that we'll be forced to take. So yeah.
Thank you for coming. It's been really helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, so that moves us on to the next item is a confirmation of the agenda, which we'll see. We need to, our resolution is that the agenda be confirmed without addition or alteration. Do I have someone to move that? Second, Nikki. All in favour?
Aye.
Confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting held on the 23rd of February 2023. Yes, the resolution required that the minutes of the 23rd of February 2023 Infrastructure Committee meeting be confirmed as a true and correct record without alteration.
Just sorry, maybe second this one. Just a quick question. We had the same issue come up with the community boards. Just understanding updates to the action. You know, we don't have matters arising in these meetings, so just understanding, getting updates on the previous items, the process for that. Do we do that through the workshop, or
Yeah, well,
for example, update on what about the how the things going with the tree space, the project road, what was the next step?
I know, and that's something what we're working towards with our G and chair briefings that we have on a regular basis.
Okay.
We'll have a list of projects that will come through and have a quick update on those, and those things will be on that. So, and then it'll be up to me to then figure it out.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so the resolution's been moved and seconded that the minutes be accepted without alteration. Do we? Who's all in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Yeah. Carried. Right, so that gets us to item number 1 on the agenda, which is proposed bicycle parking in Arrowtown CBD. I'd like to invite the staff to the table. We've got Ben and Hugo, is that correct? Yes. And Toby Gatford. Morning.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just introduce actually the purpose of this report is to present the options for the Buckingham Street Arrowtown bicycle parking proposal, which is called the proposal received from the Arrowtown Promotion and Business Association, APBA. So now you can present your report.
I might take the report as read and yeah, welcome any questions.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think, you know, naturally we want to support bike parking. I'm just interested in the level of service question because what has been requested, particularly with raised garden beds and planting, is a higher level of service than we would expect throughout the district. I suppose the question is, how do we justify that, or what is the level of service we should be providing that is consistent with that we have in Wanaka or Queenstown or whatever? And you know, I'm just having a look at these planter boxes. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine what our ability to plant and maintain perennial flowers in raised plant boxes with no water and all this sort of stuff. I mean, there has to be a problem there. So just interested in your thoughts on that level of service.
Yeah, I guess we're looking like, yeah, those finer details are still work in progress and it's not finalized with APBA and us. I guess what we're looking for here is permission to convert car parking spaces to bicycle parking. The finer details of the bicycle parking spaces and racks are still in discussion.
So are we not to take these images from Baxter Design Group as what is being requested in those spaces?
That's what's been requested, and
Okay.
We do need to balance the maintenance cost, which is definitely a thing with if we do just put bike parks in these parking spaces, they are currently on a road, and so we feel at this stage that some level of protection to those is required. Now that could be a planter box without plants in it or some sort of wall, but we do feel that some additional protection is worthwhile if it was felt that the maintenance implications were too great. We could work on lower cost options. We haven't finalised any agreement with the APBA around exactly what the layout's going to be.
Okay, well, I suppose with that in mind, I mean, as I said, I'm supportive of using some parks for bike parking, but I think we need to be clear about what the level of service that we provide district-wide is and what is the appropriate treatment here. Because I have significant concerns about both the cost and maintenance of providing a level of service that isn't consistent.
If that's the views of the committee as a whole, we can undertake to look at lower maintenance protection of the bike parks as we come to a final solution.
It appears that that's just one final question. It appears they've also require the road, the concrete, they've got concrete pads on which these form. Can you not just put it on road level?
There were two options, right? Yeah, one was the concrete pad, one was on road level, and yeah, our preference was the road level one for a few reasons.
Yeah. Oh, yes, that's two different versions there. Okay, yeah, I mean, once again, is the cost, you know, who pays for it? The cost, we have to be realistic. It doesn't, well, that might be nice. I don't think it's necessary that they are on concrete and elevated. You know, we have multiple parking bike parks in Wanaka, for instance, that we're using the hoop style free parking ones that were put into existing paved areas and concrete paths and stuff without significant adjustments. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely go on record as saying that staff's preferred option was that at grade with existing road rather than the concrete pad option. So that's certainly where we're tending to go.
Cool.
Nikki first.
Thanks, you're just following on from there, there was nothing a bit, and look, I know it's a small thing, but around emissions and stuff, so it'd be great if we could start talking about, you know, what is the emissions cost of having a concrete platform, just so we can start to think about that when we make our decisions. But I'd like to specify in the resolution that we support the option without the concrete pad, just so nothing changes. And just a question, I'm wondering if, you know, is there a possibility if they want planter boxes, because I understand, you know, small communities and protecting that unique, you know, vibe of Arrowtown, can we write something in that they do the maintenance on the flowers, you know, and then they can have it both ways?
We
I don't know if
certainly
that's-
can, and we can say there's either flowers or no flowers, and if you want flowers, you can maintain them. Yeah.
I'd be happy with that personally, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think, sorry, I think, I don't know if we've got options or not, but we'd certainly discuss the option of not having a concrete pad for the various reasons.
It's just not.
Okay, so if that's the preference, then, yep. And in terms of the planter boxes, yes, I think, disagree.
Yeah, just through the chair, thank you. Just following on from Councillor Gladdy and Councillor Smith's comments, and it's really encouraging to see APBA scattered through the report. So thanks for the ongoing dialogue that you have with that community. And I think in my time, also looking after Arthur's Point and Glenorchy back in the day, you know, certainly our smaller communities feel like that they want to be listened to, and that they work closely with council, as you in your department are doing, to make sure they get as close to what they want. So thank you for seeing APBA scattered through the report, which shows to me that the dialogue is continuing and will continue on until we get to the end of the project. And once again, the planter boxes, when I looked at those in the picture, I thought once again of what the other comments were really Arrowtown, but we'll let that conversation happen and you'll advise us. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Can I pose a question? If we don't have planter boxes, just we did briefly with what we talked about, but if we didn't have planter boxes, what would be the minimum that we'd need in that space to delineate? Because even if we go APA, you need to maintain the flowers. If they don't,
We got the, sorry, through the chair, we took away the planter box, we've still got pretty great posts there. Yeah, a really big structure. It's slow speed, very slow speed environment.
I'd prefer us to remove the planter boxes and at least.
Well, you got, yeah, I just quarter posts to mark the area. It's I'm not, I don't know what the community, what the Arrowtown saying on it, don't want to, you know, but you've got to be yeah, I think it's over the top with plant boxes like that, and it also, looking at it from here, it seems to take away from the character of the street. If you went to some rustic posts that needs a little hitching rail for the horse days, you know, put one of them there, and your bike rack off that, it's starting to look historic. So I'm not on the AB Arrowtown Association, but I think they're over the top. I think you get away with this some sort of post
Hitching rail.
framework.
Hitching rail.
Yeah, I know. Well, why not? So yeah, the question then I had was also that you'd raised, Mr. Chairman, about the type of racks. You know, we seem to have a whole variety around the place. I'm not saying we have to go to one standard rack, but obviously some are more functional than others. I don't know what we don't have in the code of practice or anything, a standard for bike racks or anything, do we?
Statements.
Oh, sorry, we put your bike into it. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, thanks.
Because some of the bikes, you know, some of the big electric bikes, they take, take a bit more space than others, and
Yes, so I had that same question, obviously, which I circulated previously, but in terms of the planter boxes, I mean, the proposals that we've got have come from the Arrowtown Promotion and Business Association. You know, they've provided these through a consultant, and you say you're still in the, you know, very much at the stage of firstly getting approval to use parking spaces for that, and then going through the process of determining exactly what the layout of the cycle racks and plant boxes might be. So that's still work to be done, I guess. taking on board the feedback today, I suppose. I mean, yeah, as I've said yesterday, I have a clear, I don't think it went to you, Ben, actually, but you might have seen it. I personally, as a user, have a clear preference for a certain type of bicycle stand or rack. But, you know, there's different options, and I don't know whether it'll come back to us or whether you'll make a decision based on the best solution to that. The other question I did have was just to confirm that the council would be responsible for the maintenance of the racks, and if they were there, plant boxes. I guess you've mentioned there could be the requirement for the gardening part of that to be carried out by the area town businesses.
We certainly think it would be reasonable for the maintenance of bicycle racks to be undertaken by council. That would also extend to the maintenance of probably the boxes themselves. So if those boxes get hit by a vehicle, then that's going to probably incur some cost. But to your point, Lyle, about placing something like a bollard or some kind of barrier there, we could, as part of our work with the APBA to come to the final solution, we can look at whether we could replace the plant boxes with a bollard.
Currently, they've got bollards as well. They've got a timber post as well as the plant box side by side.
So I just wonder if you've heard that if the committee is happy to approve this, and maybe talk to the APA, come back and design check. We can check back with the chair and deputy chair if we need to. I'll be reluctant to bring it back to the committee again for subsequent decision. Happy with that?
Yeah, and I suppose that was going to be my point, is that, well, in principle, I'm happy to support the use of the parking spaces. I think there's more work on design. So, you know, my guidance would be affordability, consistency of level of service, and I actually don't prefer the planter boxes. I don't think they're a good idea. And you know, at existing road grade would be the other guidance. So that's probably 4 points of, you know, would give as guidance. I'm happy for it to go back to the chair to sign off on, but I wouldn't want to be signing off on the design that's been given to us today.
So my next point or question was about the parking on Wiltshire Street, and I know I've seen some correspondence being about some Wiltshire Street parking proposed by for cycles proposed by the Fork and Tap on that corner. Now, I think the proposal that I did see from them was much more substantial than just some bike parks and a car park. But and that was obviously where you got, from what I've read, got to a point where they would have had to apply for a license to occupy for that and maintain it themselves. Is there any way we can have a similar solution to one of these in a single car park to be considered for Wiltshire Street in that location?
Yes, so just an update on that. I'm looking to schedule a site meeting with the Fork and Tap to run through the options, and that's certainly going to be something that I can explain to them, that if the proposal is reworked to a point where it's a bike rack and a car park, that is more of an infrastructure committee decision. Otherwise, if they want to do the hedges, the schist curbs, and all the other things, it's at this stage seen as a license to occupy.
So if it was just to reduce to a single car park with the same type of bike rack as what we've presented from the Arrowtown Motion Business Association, it would fall into the same scenario then installed. They would be looking to, well, we'd be asking them to contribute towards the cost of that, because I think the APBA have said they can only afford what's in this proposal in front of us.
If it was simply a bike rack, I think that's something council could find a budget for. The reason why we're looking for the financial contribution for this is because it includes the plant boxes and all the other things, so they're a little bit out of total scope.
Okay, so do we need to include anything in that resolution to talk about the Wiltshire Street edition? Or?
Wiltshire Street in terms of the Fork and Tap?
Well, it's outside the Fork and Tap, but it's a Wiltshire Street car park.
I don't think there's anything in front of us that you can make a resolution about.
Well, we're looking at our resolution is that we endorse the proposed removal of car parking spaces at 3 locations on Buckingham Street, 1 location on the laneway beside Athenian Hall. Can we include in that 1 space on Wiltshire?
I think they're different proposals. So the Wiltshire Street proposal is part of this report, as part of the APBA's proposal. and the fork and tap as another separate thing.
So we could make a point for to direct to consider.
Yeah.
maybe.
We don't need a
Don't
such
need it,
resolution.
just go.
Did you have a question?
I was just going to move it with a couple of wording changes. If that was appropriate, and I can sort of foreshadow that rather than putting it and then getting in trouble. I was going to suggest that point 2. We just add in replace with bicycle racks on the existing road grade or something to that effect. Does that make sense? So that we're excluding the concrete pad option.
I think the advice was that we
And-
were going to include a additional point around the approval of the final design with the chair.
I think it is quite clear in here that there are 2 options and that the preferred, well, I may not say preferred, but that the lower cost option is the one without the concrete bases.
It's just making sure that that other option can't happen.
Well,
But that's fine if everyone's comfortable in with just that direction. And the other one wording change I was just going to make would be to 3, responsible for ongoing maintenance, excluding any plant maintenance. But if we don't think we need those, that's fine.
No, look, again, either way, trying to put blank excluding plant maintenance, then it's pretty clear response back to
Well,
APA that
Yeah,
whatever it is, that council's not comfortable with that, which might drive a different outcome, which is fine. If you want to make that,
No, absolutely, yeah, it makes out.
easier, yeah, good, okay. Well, and would the same apply to the concrete pad or?
You can add that in, but I think the report is pretty much excludes that and notes, I think somewhere that we've only got budget for that.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so I'll happy to move the motion move the recommendation with the addition to point 3 of responsible for ongoing maintenance, except excluding the maintenance of plants.
How do we see that?
Well, we can just be moved.
That's the motion I'm moving, so we just move
That's fine.
that.
But the question becomes whether we take that point as a point 4 or something, that the final design is subject to approval by the chair of
We could add that
infrastructure, might be an appropriate one. And if, with that addition, if Nikki's happy to recommend it, we can move that as a single motion, all 4 recommendations and
Absolutely.
vote on it if that's,
I'd be happy to add to that motion a point 4 that says this should come back to the chair.
I do want to put the 24.
Do you want to word that, Tony?
subject to the final design,
I suppose it's,
they've approved the approval of the final
I just
design
wondered-
by the chair.
I just want to be, under number 2, that just at the end, we put after bicycle racks, the final design to be confirmed by,
Subject to.
subject to,
Is that even appropriate?
I know, it's, I mean, if you're looking to have the sort of some process where the chair then goes, okay, happy with that, does it need to be a separate resolution or in addition to the number 2? Chairs.
I guess my question is, can the committee delegate to the chair?
Oh, definitely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
We do it all, we've done it all the time.
So I'd probably prefer to have it as number 2 at the end. So subject to chair's sign off or approval, final approval, something like that.
do you need more direction than that, John?
So far on 2, after we would add at the end there and replace with bicycle racks, adding with final design subject to the chair's approval.
Perfect.
And then on 3, the last sentence would be the ongoing maintenance and then adding on that excluding plant maintenance.
Excluding any plant maintenance, just in case we don't go to plants.
And just to go back to the workshop, the only reason I'm asking about it is that if we don't have anything in here, does that mean you need to come back to another meeting in 3 months' time or later to go through the same process for it? Or can we recommend that it's an option for your future investigation?
Well, the answer is that as it stands, we would have to come back because officers don't have the delegation to remove park and replace it with something else. But I don't know whether we can add that in now, and if we can, that'd be great, because it will save it.
Yeah.
Having to come back.
That's what I was thinking. Any thoughts?
No, I don't know what that would look like at the moment. I mean, we can, leave it to Ben and Hugo to work that through, but I've also seen a much more expensive plan from the Fork Attack, which would not be covered by the beach, which we would want to bring back. So,
Yeah, no, that's what I was meaning. That would only be on the proviso that it was a much reduced scenario like what it's got on Buckingham Street.
I suppose the topic is then, when you don't have anything in front of them that allows them to understand that. I'm not sure how it would actually word it.
Where does the delegation sit? Like, I can understand this paper and agree with this paper coming to us because it was a number of parks and in Arrowtown, I think it was appropriate to do that. But if a single park anywhere in the district was to be converted, does the delegation not sit with you to be able to give that approval in the case of one park being?
I'd like to think so, but I'm not.
That's not my understanding.
It has to go as infrastructure committee. Okay.
Yeah, we'll leave that for now because we don't.
I think we have to, it's hard to consider something without having the stuff reported on it, so, yeah.
Yeah, the actual location of it. It's not the location.
And then the next
I
page,
couldn't see added in there, but
and then the next paper in effect is.
taxi stuff.
I'm happy to move what John has come up with.
Okay,
With the second.
can I get you to read that? Oh, I can read it out, sure. So the resolution before us is that the Infrastructure Committee note the contents of this report, endorse the proposed, number 2, endorse the proposed removal of car parking spaces at 3 locations on Buckingham Street and 1 location in the laneway beside the Athenian Hall within the Arrowtown CBD and replaced with bicycle racks, with final design subject to the Chair's approval. And number 3, note that the Queenstown Lakes District Council will fund the installation costs and be responsible for the ongoing maintenance, excluding any plant maintenance. We have a move up for that. Yeah.
I'm going to second that, Chairman.
You all in favour? Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just a quick question to the staff, following on from public forum, are there any taxi ranks in Narragansett? One. Okay, thanks.
Okay, this is item number 2 on page 37 of the agenda. Additional parking restrictions under the Traffic and Parking Bylaw 2018. The report's author is Hugo. Hugo will be presenting the report. The purpose of this report is to recommend various new and updates to existing parking restrictions. Hand it over to Hugo to present his report.
Take the report this back and questions.
Sorry?
No.
I do. You do?
Yep. Well, similar to yours, but just on the drawing on page 46 of my agenda, Allenstein Street, the parking bay hockey stick line marking. You see the picture up there, so the 121, oh, that's the number of the house, sorry, 46. I was just questioning the, are we looking at, yeah, the hockey stick seems to cover an area over the hockey sticks right behind a vehicle was Andrew Park there. Is that, what parking is that? Is that unofficial parking or something? Are we looking at the same room?
Yeah, I think that's
A white roof vehicle angle park there.
I believe it's a walkway to the front door. And not a driveway.
Oh, it's not a driveway.
Gotcha.
Okay. Okay, then page 50. That's the Lewis Road, where you want to take out the parking in the cul-de-sac so people can turn around there. What, just back from the cul-de-sac, the entrance to it is that a large a footpath or something on the top side there? Or driveway?
At 11.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a driveway, is it? Okay, it's where cars can't park there anyway. Okay, that's right. Yeah. On that. Okay. And then I understand I supported the your comment, Mr. Chair, and your thing about the question about the parking on Park Street. Why do you have it on the lakeside rather than on the residential side? That's one question you put through.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're moving it, you're putting no parking on the residential side, you're pushing it all onto the outside. It's a question of why that is.
yeah, so I guess there's more parking on the southern side along the lakefront. There's
Okay.
driveways, access to Jubilee Park pump station. And I think if we were to flip the parking to the northern side, it would be a difference of 24 parking spaces. Yeah.
Okay, so you lose a lot more. Yeah, well, obviously you would, yeah. Okay.
Oh, Vicky.
Discovered a question. Just on some of the parts of, I think it's Hellenstein Street, you've set out the actual parking bays and you've got lines in between the hockey sticks. And then in other parts we haven't got lines in between. So you've got specific bays, and that's, I guess, more efficient because you've always got the maximising the space. Is there a reason why we haven't delineated bays all the way along?
Yeah, so once you get to 4 or more bays, you can just line mark either end of them. So it's an open space in between for, not free reign, but yeah, it's typically only marked individual bays up to 3, and then 4 or more, just either end are marked as the start and end.
Right, so could we do more if we were thinking of making the best use of the space, or would that be all?
Do you mean more here at this particular location, or you mean more around expanding along the whole of
Just
Hellenstein Street?
the parts of Hellenstein Street that you're doing the hockey sticks on, would it be worth delineating those bays so that you don't get somebody just, you know?
So you said like page 46, there's got the 2-end hockey sticks, but nothing in between it. And then page 47, you've got that, because I see what you're saying, up to 3 you'll mark them, but no, after 3 you don't mark them. I didn't realise that. No, that's good.
I think our current approach is to do it the way it's shown, and we could add more lines that just adds to the maintenance cost over time. It's you don't actually need the hockey sticks, so we've already gone some way to delineating it and improving it. Do we go further and put individual spaces? We could start doing that, but at this stage, the approach is not to.
The hockey sticks are really there to ensure that the entrances and exits are kept clear, aren't they? That, as you know, show the limit of parking, and we're not trying to over control everything. We're trying to solve a discrete problem. So yeah, I mean, people still have to park, sensibly. No, yeah.
And sometimes the actual length doesn't align exactly to the number of parking spaces. It might be a metre longer, and we'll just mark it like that. But once you start to mark the individual lines, it can look a little bit funny.
Bigger vehicles. I am a bit concerned too about where Lila said on page 46, where that car looks like it is using that as a driveway. And I know that's probably, that.
Yeah, it is.
And so they may have concerns when somebody decides to park outside the front. And
I don't think that house, looking at it, it looks like it already has a vehicle driveway or access
It
way.
does.
Beside that.
They're only entitled to their vehicle crossing. Not
Yeah.
the
yeah, no, I
squatters.
figured I'm just.
The squatters. Yeah, the squatters. And just to confirm, at the end of Park Street in the turning bay, there's already yellow markings around the turning head. Is that right? Why you've excluded that? Yeah.
So I had a couple of questions. The first one was about, which I think you've seen them. First one was to do with the Goldfield Heights Road, the top of that on page 45. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what my first question is, what's driven the review of these particular areas? Has it been comments or requests from residents, or is it just something that's come up?
It's often reactive through the request for service system.
Right, okay. Do you know whether this particular one's come through that channel?
It has, yes.
Yeah. I know certainly looking up there, as you come up to the top of that road, there's a rock face underneath house number 4 there on the page, but it's quite a way back from the curb. It's actually quite open there. And you know, not as blind as perhaps it might appear. I guess the issue that I've got is that, as I mentioned in that email, and as shown on the photo, there's a number of cars parked on the footpath. Quite often there's more than that. And my preference would be if, you know, if people don't park, haven't got somewhere to park on the other side of the road, they park on, you know, the near side of the road, which is the footpath, and they park on the footpath. And it does tend to be quite obstructive to people trying to use the footpath, and I know that from experience on that particular stretch of road. But I guess this committee is not concerned with today trying to stop people parking on the footpath, and you've got means for doing that. I just wondered whether it needed to be as extensive on that corner. Any comments to make on that?
So it's mostly around the road width, is that right here, rather than side distance issues, so it's just not wide enough for parking on one side, or sorry, both sides, so we're just making that clear with the lines and eliminating the parking, but what that might require is removal of the solid white centre line too, so the layout overall makes sense.
Right.
That solid white centre line in theory means that if you're parking there on the road, you're parking in a life lane, which, you know, you shouldn't be parking there if there's not space for someone to drive past you, but in reality that's really a difficult one to enforce on and isn't clear to people, so just painting those lines as a recommended solution to help make that area a bit clearer and function better. But as you've noted, Gavin, it's going to require some enforcement of the footpath parking issue, which we can highlight for the enforcement team.
Yeah, okay. Well, and also, yeah, that's not solely restricted to that stretch of road. There's any number of people parking on footpaths any given day.
We could do some comments around it more.
Yeah. Okay. The next question I had about it was Park Street, which we've already perhaps talked about with parking on which side of the road. I mean, I've come down that way again today, and you know, really that end of Park Street has never really struck me as being a major issue compared to the other end. And I don't know, is there any consideration being given to the other end where it is much narrower with cars parked on both sides?
The other one, yeah.
As it approaches the gardens.
Yeah, so the other end was improved around 3 or 4 years ago, where the current there's some broken yellow lines and some hockey sticks parking through that area. Yes, and the roadway width through there is still narrow. It's certainly not wide enough for 2 lanes of traffic, but a lot of our streets aren't, and you get the pull-in areas in between where cars park and where there's a lot of properties. Yes, and I think that's part of the issue is with this other end, there are fewer properties and less areas to pull in between. And so when there are 2 cars coming towards each other, there's just not as many opportunities to get past. And the road width is nominally a little bit narrower at the it's the eastern end rather than the western end. So just the education for putting those lines in place.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, in my mind, certainly on the corner by Jubilee Park, I can see the reason for that, and that is more of a safety issue.
What page is it?
Where are we? It's the one on page 52.
52.
Yep. See, there's lines on both sides of the road around that corner.
Yep.
But yeah, for the rest of Park Street, from the Crescent to the end, the Frankton track, I'm not convinced because it's not going anywhere anyway. It's a better situation than at the other end, which has more traffic. There are vehicle access ways which people obviously can't park on. So there is some space if there are cars travelling in either direction and one needs to stop, there is space for them to stop in those vehicle access ways. And in a lot of places it's actually wide enough for people to pass if they're travelling at the correct slow speed. And I'm concerned that if we open up one side of it completely, that the speeds will go up. And given that it's the feeder to and from the Frankton track, and a lot of people use it, and a lot of children use it as well, that the speeds of cars will increase, and it'll make it less safe for cyclists. Where currently it's it's almost acting like a shared space for vehicles and cyclists.
Yeah, look, I do tend to support that viewpoint too, Gavin, and the reason why it's been recommended for marking as it is based on a road width, where you measure the road width, you subtract the width of the car park, and then have a look at what's left over. Is it a wide enough lane that meets the minimum lane width for an emergency services vehicle?
Yeah.
And so you might drive along and agree, it probably does look like it would work, and it has been working. It's just that width.
Yeah.
Of width of road minus width of park plus width of traffic lane kind of calculation, and that's been generally the basis for our implementation of the lines around the network, and we do definitely, just my comments would be, we do run the risk of getting into that grey area where we sort of make those decisions, but that's absolutely not my decision to make. So.
Yeah. On that basis, though, then, and that's why I raised the issue at the other end, and when that was looked at last, but if there's enough lane width for the arrangement at the western end as it approaches the corner towards the gardens, if that's satisfactory, then the eastern end that we're talking about will be, I'm sure, will be better than the western end, will be satisfactory as well. I'm sure there is a wider lane width between the two rows of parked cars at the eastern end than there is at the western end. So if we've accepted it at the western end, I don't see we've got any justification for changing it at the eastern end.
Or we need to change it at the other end as well.
Well, that's that's where we looked at it
The
relatively.
measurements were that it is a bit narrower at that eastern end, and
Absolutely, no, they haven't taken my tape measure out there, but I did think about doing that this morning.
At the risk of getting into going into tape
Yeah.
measures, this is a recommendation, so I'm just unclear what you would suggest, because as I look at it, page 54, 53, to show various markings, are you suggesting that none of those get approved, or only you've got a particular view that some of them should be approved? Just so we're clear.
Well, I guess on the basis that the western end is acceptable, then that would suggest to me that none of these are required, apart from perhaps the bit on the corner.
I think it's
Junior chart.
caution about basing a decision based on that, frankly.
I know, that's my opinion, based on that as a decision-making process. If we were to have parking restrictions, if the lane width is an issue, then my preference, and I'm not speaking for everyone else here, but is that the parking stays where it can on the residential side, and if there is a lane restriction there, then the parking restrictions go on the other side to break it up. And it also gives you that visual impact that the lane is still narrow and you still need to travel carefully, but that there is space for people to move to pass each other if needed. Thank you.
Yeah, just an additional point on that, because obviously this is an active travel route, and I imagine a lot of cyclists are using the footpath. There's still the danger that you've got cars parking and passengers in there that just open doors onto them. So there's that whole element of, are we going to make this a really cycle friendly place? And if we probably haven't applied that lens to these options, but I just wonder if it needs some consideration. There's an amenity issue, there's a safety issue. Yes, we'd lose more parks, but we're weighing up safety for pedestrians.
No, it's an entirely different question. It's not.
It is.
Paper.
Yeah, but
So what's in front of you is, do you approve the parking spot? And look, bike there, many people bike there. Most people, my experience, don't park on the footpath there. They rely on a slow speed environment. Again, at the risk of leaping to technical decisions based on our own individual use.
well, it's just considerations that haven't been, things that haven't been considered in the report that may be valid. So it hasn't been made on that basis, but it also hasn't been considered.
Because it's not the basis for this report. This is, So I also note that some of the line markings appear to be protecting of cars encroaching on individual driveways, which may be a different matter.
Can we take them separately? Or not? Is it too difficult?
I would, I mean, I don't know Park Street as well, but I mean, you know, we've had advice that, you know, this in large part is making sure that emergency vehicles and service vehicles can get in and out. I know Lyle's put his hand up, I'll let him say something. I'm just going to say, I do think we need a certain amount of objectivity in this stuff. While it's easy for us to redesign it on the fly, I'm not quite sure that's helpful. I don't know Park Street well enough. Does it end up getting where everyone goes to the beach and ends up being packed out in summer? I mean, how much pressure is there here, and
It's not a trip.
is you know, halving the number of car parks and doing it on the other side of the road actually gonna fly? Is it gonna cause a whole different level of problem around loss of parking? I don't know.
I think it is heavily used currently, along the length side of the street. It backs up quite a long way back towards where we are, even to this corner.
I think it's fair to say it's a large community parking area, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
When we can switch lane.
Because it's free parking, so people are parking there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Kayak Club are down, excuse me, down by.
But what impact does that have on, you know, it's free commuter parking, which is great. And I know there would be issues if we took it away, but what I'm saying is there's other considerations that maybe haven't been thought about. And so we've been presented with a report that hasn't considered these things.
So just be clear again, this report is not about those other matters, it isn't about a parking restriction.
But when you put a parking restriction in place, should we not be thinking about those things?
No, sorry, it's that they're two entirely different matters, and that other matter would be a considerable piece of work to suddenly put in you're asking for a widened footpath, I'm assuming. That's you know,
No.
you've got a paper in front of you. That's limited to only consideration of parking restrictions on Park Street. It does not deal with those other matters we might want it to. I agree.
But if we're deciding to put them on one side, what we're doing is we're saying that, look, to be clear, at the end of Park Street, we're saying the road is too narrow to allow parking on both sides. So we're going to restrict it. And as Gavin's pointed out, that sort of applies to most of the length of Park Street. So the question then is, which side do we have the parking restriction on? And what would be the pros and cons of having it on the lakeside versus the other side? To me, that's the issue. And if I was going to weigh up the pros and cons of it, I need to have all of that information in front of me. So for Park Street, I'm not convinced. The others I'm fine with, but I wouldn't want to approve Park Street, I don't think at this point, because we haven't thought about those safety issues, amenity issues, and the weighing up of access for commuters to free parking versus those other benefits of not having so much parking on the lakeside of the street.
At this stage, the recommendation logic has been preserve 24 car parks rather than implement that. And network wide, we've got people parking next to footpaths and active travel paths. So it'd be quite I think just a significant task to undertake that separate discussion.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that that assumption of changing car parks is one that is valid.
Yeah, it's about the parking. I'm taking a step back, looking at the philosophy or the process. And you said that a lot of this comes from requests for service applications. It's really understanding the priority, because I can take you to a lot of streets in Wanaka where cars are parked on both sides of the road and you can only get down the middle. You have to give way and wait for the other car to come through. So I'm just nervous if what is driving this compared with, say, Upper Helwick Street in Wanaka, or other streets around the district. I'm just looking at the whole strategy on dealing with putting in no parking. Do we just react to requests for services, or are we going to be doing this throughout the network when you've got an issue with cars on both sides and having trouble getting emergency vehicles down the road. Because we've got like Northlake, the streets are designed for basically one vehicle, and there are whole parts of
We did
town.
have to intervene in Northlake and do exactly the same by marking one side, because
Yeah.
people were parking on both sides and the rubbish trucks and fire trucks couldn't get down the middle. And
So we are doing it network wide.
we did it.
There is a regular report that comes to council with the current kind of sites that have been identified, but to answer your question really is are we doing a network wide look? We're not really sourced at the stage, and we haven't been directed to undertake a full network wide review, for example, of all parking matters in the district. So we do to an extent react as they pop up, but when they pop up, we do have a look around the area.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what we get.
And I, like I said, I would reinforce that we have been progressively dealing with the narrow roads with, you know, and Hanley's Park, Northlake, you know, parking restrictions in, turning heads, shot over country, we've done as well, turning heads in, you know, this is progressively, as they arise, we are dealing with them. And I think, you know, as I said, there's a certain level of objectivity we need here, and it's, you know, to deal with the issues. And I mean, I'm happy to move if we're at that point, but I don't think we can really take or leave, you know, we're either, yeah, I mean, we've got to be careful not to redesign it on the fly, and I'd caution against that. I'd suggest we take or leave it.
My only concern is my main concern is the speed and safety, speed of vehicles and safety side. So we've got a clear lane down one side, cars parked on the other side. More width, the speed of vehicles will increase. And that's my main concern for this area. Is there, and I mentioned it earlier, but could you make a comment on whether or not we could consider the Park Street section of it, but flipping it over so that where the yellow lines are marked now, they're on the other side of the road. So it achieves the same outcome, but the lane width.
I think I need to caution, because I don't think you want to suddenly put a lane marking on that side of the road without a fuller report, because that's a very extensive commuter parking area. I don't think it's a simple matter of flipping the side.
It's losing the same, so it's not the full length of this, it's the same lane marking just on the other side of the road.
I don't.
That's
If
no
you
loss
want
of
to do it, I
parking.
need to come back and report on that.
Yeah.
Be cautious. I would urge you not to make that decision today.
Just to be clear for the Wanaka councillors, this Park Street flows onto the Frankton track, right? So Frankton track's coming out into this and then goes into another wide
So it's
commuter path. It's a very strategically important piece of roading. And this decision is really important, and I don't think the report speaks to that. And so I just wonder if we put these marks in, they're in there, and I mean, look, we could flip them over, they're just marks, but I think it just, to me, it requires more consideration and recognition of the context of what we're trying to achieve from Frankton all the way to Queenstown. And I wonder if we do need that report to consider that middle piece and safety in there, because of the volumes that we're expecting
Volumes of what?
through of commuter transport from Frankton.
So
I mean, this is,
if you're in terms of trying to make progress, you've got an option of
Yeah.
approving the other changes, not that one, which is an option you've got. I'd urge caution that suddenly making changes to that on the fly.
Okay, I understand that.
yeah.
So in my view, to make progress, you either approve everything, approve some of them, your call.
I'd like to see a report, a further report on which side of the road and what's more important,
So
safety or
just-
commuter parking.
So can I just, if we do ask for that, that's not a small piece of work, because if you're looking, suddenly look at, I don't know what we've actually had done on the active travel routes through there, but there's a lot. That's not a simple report,
Why is it any more complicated than what we have? I mean, we're
because
talking
I've just tried to explain to you. So highly used commuter park area, as I understand. And if you want to put in some form of greater active travel route through there, there are some implications which we need to work through. It's not a simple matter, despite what you may think.
Keeping in mind that we have intended to do upgrades to the Park Street active travel route, particularly around the corner and up as it goes up to the park and stuff, but they've either been deferred or not progressed at this stage, I think.
So there's a workshop next week. We're reporting back on the Tops Rise
Coronation Drive.
Coronation Drive as well. So my suggestion, you may want to refer that or not approve the Park Street options, approve the others.
I think in my mind, so just to go back a step, in my mind, you know, I know what you're saying, that we want to avoid making design decisions on the fly in a committee meeting. What I think would be good to look at is just the effect of transferring the broken yellow lines to the opposite sides to where they're shown, and the effect that that has on the street. You know, does it provide the lane widths you need? What's the effect on traffic speeds?
Exactly the same situation, it's just what.
That's what I'm saying. So
There's
no-
24 car parks.
No change in car parking numbers?
It is
on the other
it's
side.
24 car park, it's advising it's a net loss of 24 car park.
Well, that's what this current report has, isn't it?
No, they're saying that swapping would result in a net loss of 24 car parks.
How many do we lose in this one?
Well, I don't know.
24 more, because what we've got on the uphill side of the roads or the access ways.
Yeah.
And so if you then transfer parking to that side of the road, there's less parking available because you can't park outside an access way.
So only where you've got yellow lines shown now, those yellow lines will be on the other side of the road. So there's no net loss of parking on that basis.
Okay, so those.
So the areas you
Yes,
can't park
in that
on,
case, well, maybe we report back.
and we can talk about it further.
Yeah, because I wouldn't understand why you suddenly just moved to the other side. So, you know, I think rather than trying to debate that, we can report back if you like. It's just another report we need to do.
So can we break that out in that it depends whether everyone's here, but then we might need to propose that we break it down to Park Street set aside and the other areas together.
The very end of Park Street, because are we happy with the corner on page 52?
Well, I think we just leave Park Street.
Leave Park Street.
That's my suggestion. I'm not making the decision for you.
I would support that recommendation if you want to comment that if we're going to leave it, we should leave all of it.
So the question then becomes, what resolution do we pass today in order to enable that?
So maybe it's excluding the Park Street no parking restriction proposal. You'll note also that we've got a Park Street large vehicle restriction, which I'm assuming we still want to have in. Yes. So it would be excluding the Park Street no parking restriction proposals.
So
If that's what you wanted to do.
Shown on pages 51 to 54.
That's what the decision committee is.
and then what request that they report back on a comprehensive approach to Park Street, including active travel.
Which would be, let's see, if we take us.
Well, we're not suggesting that you do a full active travel review of this on the road, but just the effects of this on active travel users in terms of vehicle speeds.
We can look at just Park Street in isolation, but that is risking not undertaking a network-wide view. And if we then approve Park Street on the basis of a design not to have vehicles parked next to a footpath, what's the implication for other similar situations around the network?
To be clear, I'm not saying all the vehicles on the footpath side, only the areas where the broken yellow lines are shown on these plans on the other side of the road.
That doesn't make sense because you end up with this.
Okay, no, so we've heard the various views.
Yeah.
If you want to report, we can report that without trying to bake the cake here.
I'm happy to move that with the exclusion of Park Street.
So I think it would be under
Parking
recommendation 2, where it says set out attachment A and B, would be comma excluding Park Street no parking change proposals. If one to be specific, is identified on pages, whatever they were. And it's very explicit. That's
So I'm just conscious of, just procedurally, I'm conscious of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. If there's difference of opinion here and that motion's moved, but someone doesn't support that, are they throwing away the other ones? Can we somehow separate them so that we can approve the ones that we want to approve and then the votes fall the way they will on Park Street?
if you're saying maybe parts of Park Street that
No, I'm just saying that the other provisions I'm just saying if we group them into the one resolution.
Yeah.
And that and it's defeated, we're left with nothing. And those other ones, the turning heads and everything, in other parts of the Queenstown are dead. So I think there's general acceptance that all the other ones are fine. Let's approve those. And then let's vote on Park Street. So can we separate two into A and B and vote on them separately?
Might work easier as an amendment, and we can, if
So
someone
one-
puts an amendment or something.
one option is to still exclude under option 2, excluding Park Street, and then have a new resolution, which relates only to Park Street. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you could, if you added on the end of 2, excluding Park Street, and then also move to number 3, which basically would be
Takes a
three
separate
changes to.
But the problem then is if that's defeated, then you've still, if that next one's lost, then you've also excluded it in the motion above. So
So maybe you need to
you need
move
to
some.
separate, you need to separate all the provisions other than Park Street, vote on them, and then have all the provisions relating to Park Street and vote on them, so you can actually get a resolution on everything. Yeah, okay. Cool, happy with that. So take your advice on the
Thank you,
way.
John. Thank you, John.
I think 2 would then come at the end, as I forget, after attempting A and B, excluding parking, Park Street, no parking changes proposed. Then have a 3, have exactly the same wording, approve changes to the new and existing restrictions relating to Park Street, if that's what you're looking for. It's not, you're anticipating some of Park Street.
No, I'm not, no, I'm just, Park Street should be dealt with as one piece. So, yeah.
I think one suggestion is you exclude Park Street explicitly, and then have a new 3, which proposes to approve changes to the roading layout for Park Street as identified in appendix attachment.
Does that not get awkward?
Does get awkward.
I just thought
but
the simplest way might be for somebody to move the motion. I can propose an amendment. If the amendment to exclude Park Street, if the amendment fails, you're just reverting to the original.
Yeah, well, that's fair.
It's probably simpler because we haven't got them all set out as A, B, C, D. It's easier, it might be easy for John.
What is easy?
Someone want to move?
So
You've got to move the resolution on the table first, then move an amendment.
okay, well,
What's recommended?
I'll recommend this. I'll make the resolution as it sits then, that we accept everything.
I'll second that.
And then I will propose an amendment to that. And the amendment will be to change to approve changes to the new and existing restrictions applying to the on-road and off-road parking restrictions as set out in attachment A and B, excluding the, how did you word it, Tony?
Parking restrictions in Park Street.
Excluding the
Street.
parking restrictions for Park Street.
I think it's Park Street proposed parking restrictions.
Initially, you said excluding the Park Street, no parking changes proposed.
Yes.
Shown on page 51.
Correct, that would be the wording of my amendment. Do I have a second for my amendment?
I will second that.
And then we're going to put the amendment.
So you've got to call the votes on the amendment.
So the amendment, currently we will know what the amendment is.
Yep.
Need to read it out.
Yes.
Right. It's been moved and seconded, all in favour? Right.
Aye.
So it's a fail, it's.
No.
So we.
It's failed, yeah.
It's failed.
So we revert to the
So we go back
original
to the original,
and then we vote on that.
right,
But how many votes do we get?
two.
things.
So now you
So now
can
you
focus on the.
So now we're back to the original resolution, which is
Yep.
Already been put and seconded. So all in favour of that?
And I'm against. And I'd like that recorded. Thank you.
Thank you up there. We'll navigate it eventually.
Yeah. Right, so that concludes our business as far as I'm aware and concludes our meeting. The meeting is closed at 11 minutes past 11.